I'm so very pleased to welcome everyone here to the offices of RFK Human Rights. As you may know, my family has been working for democracy and human rights and peace and justice in Cuba for over 60 years. So it's great to be with all of you today. Before we get started, I would just, we're honored today to have the widow of Oswaldo Payá here with us, Ophelia. And Ophelia, would you say a few words? And I'm going to give this to you because, are we online?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
to all of our friends online. This is Ophelia. And I'd also ask everybody, we're going to make a little presentation and we're going to have time for some questions afterwards. So be thinking about your questions. And if you have questions online, what do they do?
That's a good question.
Right?
Yeah.
Write them into the comments section. Write them into the comments section. And then or someone from our staff will be looking at them and asking the questions for them. So, Ophelia.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, dear Carrie and dear Angelita. My family and I are very grateful for this incredible center, for all the support you have given us. También quiero agradecer a los senadores, al secretario Almagro, al embajador Mora, a toda la Comisión Interamericana por todo su apoyo en este largo proceso en busca de la verdad. También quiero agradecer especialmente a todos los amigos de mi esposo que durante todo este tiempo han luchado junto a nosotros por el reconocimiento de la verdad.
I need to translate.
Thank you.
She's saying thank you, of course, Carrie, Angelita, and the whole team of this marvelous center that have been working with us for 10 years. And to the General Secretary Almagro that will be with us in a few minutes. To the ambassador from Mora that have been supporting the commission just for see this day to take place, and to all the friends of her husband, my father, that have been accompanying us and fighting with us for the recognition of the truth.
Thank you, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias a todos los que nos han acompañado en este largo proceso de 10 años. Pues nada, hemos llegado felizmente a esta conclusión de la comisión que mucho nos ha aliviado a toda nuestra familia. Gracias a todos y que Dios los bendiga.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for this, for helping us, for accompanying us. Thank you to all our friends. This decision relieves us. So thank you for being with us, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Ophelia. And again, welcome to this briefing on the recent and long-awaited decision by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights on the case of Oswaldo Payá and Harold Cepero. Payá and Cepero were two of the most prominent voices calling for democratic overhaul of the Castro regime in Cuba. Oswaldo Payá was a founder of the Christian Liberation Movement, through which he promoted democracy and human rights in Cuba and criticized the government. Cepero was his protege throughout this struggle. In retaliation for speaking truth to power, the Castro regime threatened, harassed, and attacked these two men, and Payá in particular. And finally, when the government realized he would never give up, he would never give in. On July 22nd, 2012, the Castro regime murdered Payá and Cepero. Government officials attempted to whitewash the homicide, blaming it on a car accident. The Payá family demanded justice. RFK Human Rights has had the immense honor and responsibility of seeking justice on behalf of the Payá and Cepero families before the Inter-American system for the last 10 years. I am particularly moved to welcome the relentless champion of this case, Rosa Maria. Like her father, she has never given up. She has never stopped fighting for the truth. She is a heroic activist for democracy and civic space and a true patriot of Cuba. And just as she walked in this morning, she said, "I'm sorry for being a few minutes late. I was just protesting in front of the Cuban embassy." And that's all you need to know about this extraordinary woman. Do they know about the
They should know.
And she just got this extraordinary piece of legislation passed, renaming the street in front of the Cuban embassy for her father. And it passed unanimously in the United States. So, we're very grateful to have with us Ambassador Francisco Mora, who represents the United States before the OAS and has devoted his life to strengthening U.S. and Latin American relations. And we will hear, of course, from the great Rosa Maria, and then we'll hear from Angelita Bayans, my colleague, and this extraordinary lawyer who has won yet another case at the Inter-American Court and Commission for Human Rights. So we'll hear a little bit of the background. And when he arrives, we'll hear from the Secretary General of the OAS, but we could start with Ambassador Mora.
Thank you. Let me go after Karen Kenny's. But thank you for hosting us and for inviting me. I want to apologize first. We're in the middle of a General Assembly here in the next few days, so we have got a lot going on. But I could not miss this opportunity, regardless of what's going on. Plus, like Rosa Maria says, you must come. I'm here. But again, I apologize for that. Just a few things. The report doesn't tell us anything we didn't know, right? However, it is important for an institution like the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights that has the credibility, the reputation, the legal standing, the global legal standing of the commission that the United States and many other member states support in so many different ways. For the commission to come out with an exhaustive, detailed, clear report indicating in no uncertain terms who is responsible for the murder of Oswaldo Payá and Harlow Cepero carries a significant weight in public opinion. As you know, since the commission's ruling, that ruling has been covered by media and civil society organizations throughout the world. I've had people from Europe and from Asia and of course from Latin America send me emails or a text or whatever saying, to summarize, way to go. This is important. This is, one gave me a word that I can't say, but it's a big deal. And I had no role in it, only to just sort of insist and make sure that the report come out on a timely basis. It took too long, but it is out. And I'm glad that that we were able to be a very, very small part of it and to be part of this event. So thank you again for allowing me to be part of this event. I feel tremendous pride for seeing this out while I am the U.S. ambassador to the OAS. It's very exciting for me. And as a Cuban American, it's even doubly exciting for me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And we understand that you've got a heavy schedule, so we'd love you to stay for as long as you can, but if you have to run out, we know you're doing the important work of defending human rights. So thank you. Rosa Maria, there are no words to introduce you. You've been such an extraordinary champion. And you know, as somebody who also lost my father in the struggle for justice, I just had so much admiration, so much heartfelt admiration for your commitment and for your love, not just of your family, but of your country, of democracy, and for all the people who are struggling, all the people who are struggling for justice and who will never know the truth. And your struggle has been on behalf of everyone who's working. And so thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie, for making the cause of justice for my father, which is the cause of justice for Harold, my friend, but it's also the cause of justice for the Cuban people. You have making it your cause. Thank you so much. Thank you, Angelita. Thank you for years of dedication. It has been more than 10 years. It's easy to say, but it has been more than 10 years. Fighting for something that we have known all the way, which is that the Cuban regime killed my father. And of course, thank you to the RFK Human Rights Center. You lead a great team, a brilliant team. Thank you to the General Secretary of the OAS. Welcome. Thank you so much also to Secretary Almagro for all his support during all these years. Support for the cause of truth, for the cause of justice, but also for the cause of freedom, for the Cuban people. Thank you so much, Ambassador Mora, for insisting and insisting again for this truth to see the light. Now we can say that the truth is finally official. And that's also thank you to the hard work of the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights. Commissioner Ralón and Commissioner Vaga would love to be here. They excuse themselves. But what we see in that report is also a very thorough investigation on the facts of the attack against my father and Harold Cepero. And we will be forever grateful to the Inter-American Commission for establishing those facts and for making the truth official. What this means to us, what the recognition of the truth that is probably only half of the way, but it is very, very important for us. And I'm sure, and I really appreciate your support because you have experience in your own family what is the quest for justice. That quest has been the work of many of us, but have been also the burden imposed over thousands of victims in my country. This recognition of the truth is not only the recognition of the crime against my family, it's not only the recognition of the responsibility of the Cuban state, in my opinion, the responsibility of Fidel and Raúl Castro in ordering the murder of my father and Harold Cepero, but it's also the recognition of all the crimes, past and present, crimes of the Cuban regime. And this is crucial right now, because while we are talking, there are more than 1,000 political prisoners in the country. Because the state terrorism is the law of the land in Cuba. Because Jose Daniel Ferrer has been in jail for more than 3 months, incommunicado. We don't know if he's alive or not. That's the level of the repression that the Cuban people is living right now. And this verdict of the Inter-American Commission is bringing not only the truth of the crime against my father, but the truth of the repression against the Cuban people. While many in the world and while many in our region, despite the work of the General Secretary of the OAS, many in our region insist in remain in silence. And sometimes in complicity with those murders, with that mafia that is in power in my country. For us, for my family, the Cuban regime, they killed our dad. They killed the husband of my mother. They killed the person that give us love and sense of unity and family and responsibility. For the Cuban people, they killed probably the most brilliant adversary of the communism in my country. They were trying to kill the alternative, because that was what my father embodied, an alternative to tyranny, an alternative to hate, an alternative to oppression. He embodied hope. They failed on that. The Cuban regime failed on killing the hope. They failed on killing the legacy of my father. We have seen that legacy growing and multiplying within the Cuban people, within the hundreds of thousands that have been in the streets, within the hundreds of thousands that have been in the streets, not only in Cuba, but also in the exile community. For us, it's very important to stop the impunity of this regime. And that's also why this verdict is so important. But the truth needs to be accompanied with actions. And that's part of what we want to invite everybody here, the people that is listening, and also all the member states. I really appreciate the presence here of several ambassadors. Thank you for being with us in front of the audience. Thank you so much for joining us, because now is your turn. Now are the member states of the OAS the ones that should join the Inter-American Commission and condemn the Cuban regime, but also demand justice for the crime against my father, but also for all the crimes of that and the atrocities of that regime. And now you have a powerful weapon, which is this verdict of the Inter-American Commission, thorough, incontestable verdict of the Inter-American Commission. We hope to hear from you. We hope to hear from your states in the next days during the General Assembly. We hope to hear your voices Remembering to those that don't want to hear this, that don't want to acknowledge the truth, that the Cuban regime is a criminal mafia, and that we need to act to stop them. And we need to use the tools that the inter-American system provides. Just as we need that Europe to finally understand that it's time to change the policy. It's time to change the behavior. It's time to take sides with the Cuban people. It's time to take sides with the victims. It's time to help Cubans to finally see a destiny of freedom and democracy that is the same destiny that my father fought for. Nothing is going to compensate us, just as nothing is going to compensate the families of the thousands of victims of the Cuban regime, or the families of the thousands of victims of the Nicaraguan regime, or the Venezuelan regime, that are also victims of the Castro regime. But this brings us closer to justice. Thank you, because this reality, this truth, brings us closer to justice, a justice that we're only going to have the day that that dream of freedom and democracy of my father be a reality for the Cuban people. I do believe that that day is close. I am just as convinced as my father was. For the Cuban people, for our region, then I will not be eternal.
Well, you can understand why the Cuban regime is quaking in their boots when someone as powerful as you out there every day advocating for justice and human rights. Thank you so much. And thank you for your commitment and for pursuing this and for putting so much of your heart and your mind and your wisdom.
There are many hearts working together. Many of them are here today. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work. This is a victory of the truth. This is a victory of all the victims of the Cuban people and all the Cubans that have been fighting for so long to achieve justice, and all the friends of the Cuban people that have been fighting with us.
We're now very, very happy and proud to have with us the Secretary General of the Organization of American States. Please.
Thank you very much. Gracias, Rosa María.
Gracias.
Y, muy honrado de participar hoy aquí con ustedes, amigas, amigos. Hacemos nuestra la decisión de la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos sobre la responsabilidad del Estado de Cuba por las muertes de Oswaldo Payá y Perú, y por las torturas y violación de las garantías constitucionales judiciales en perjuicio de Ángel Carromero. Tal como lo dijo la CIDH, Oswaldo Payá, defensor de derechos humanos, líder político, y Harold Cepero, también defensor y disidente político, fueron sujetos a diversos actos de violencia, hostigamiento, amenazas, atentados contra la vida, cuando finalmente un choque vehicular les causó la muerte el 22 de junio de 2012. Posteriormente, Ángel Carromero, quien al momento del atentado conducía el vehículo y sobrevivió, fue procesado y condenado por estos hechos. En el informe, la CIDH destacó que lo ocurrido a las víctimas se enmarcó en el contexto de la persecución y represión estatal contra personas disidentes políticas y defensoras de derechos humanos en Cuba, con el objetivo de obstaculizar o paralizar la labor y defensa y promoción de los derechos humanos. La CIDH identificó indicios serios y suficientes para concluir que agentes estatales participaron en las muertes de Payá y Cepero. En particular, tomó en cuenta el testimonio de Ángel Carromero, que indica que el automóvil en el que viajaban había sido impactado por un auto oficial, lo cual fue corroborado por un testigo ocular. En su informe, la Comisión también estableció que el Estado violó el derecho a la residencia y tránsito de Oswaldo Payá y su familia. En su calidad de defensor, fue impedido circular libremente por el país en múltiples ocasiones. A la familia le negaron el desplazamiento para que retiraran el cuerpo sin vida de Payá. Esta tuvo que abandonar el país posteriormente debido a hostigamientos y amenazas por parte del Estado. La CIDH insta al Estado de Cuba a cumplir integralmente con todas las recomendaciones hechas en el informe, entre las que se destacan la reparación material e inmaterial de las víctimas y familiares, iniciar una investigación diligente, efectiva y dentro de un plazo razonable para esclarecer los hechos, identificar responsables e imponer las sanciones que correspondan, así como las medidas para evitar la repetición de los hechos y generar condiciones de retorno voluntario para las personas que fueron obligadas a reconstruir su proyecto de vida en otros lugares como consecuencia de los hechos. Es un claro caso de un crimen de lesa humanidad, es un claro caso de terrorismo de Estado, es un claro caso de violación sistemática de
Kennedy. Thank you very much.
Is a lawyer on this case. She's an extraordinary leader, not only for this organization, but for human rights across our globe. She's won landmark decisions for human rights in Colombia, in Guatemala, in Honduras, in Zimbabwe, and beyond. And so we're just so blessed and lucky to have you as a leader of our team, really. And she cares, she's just got a boundless heart, and she cares with all of her mind and all of her being. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. I do not deserve even a tenth of all these beautiful words, but I do agree that it's been an immense privilege to accompany the Payá and the Severo families in this quest for justice and for truth. This is a case in which the whole team, I mean, I'm not the only one that has worked in this case. Actually, my colleague Wade, who's somewhere, was part of the beginning of this journey, and we've had also colleagues that have since left and others work still working for human rights that I think are as proud and happy today as I am. So I also want to acknowledge that. But it's really been a long but worthy journey, and we couldn't wish for better companies. You've been the motor of it all throughout, and you know that. And as you were saying, Rosa Maria, there's been lots of supporters and friends along the way, and that has been really crucial. But why did we suggest and work with the family to bring this case to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights? As you all know, and as was very clear for the families, the prospects of justice in Cuba were none. And part of the violations actually that the commission found were precisely violations of due process with these sham trials that Angel Caromero, who's also a victim in this case, whose rights were violated, and the commission recognizes the violations against his rights. He was put in, through these sham trial, just in this attempt by the Cuban regime to make the deaths of Oswaldo Payá and Carlos Severo look like an accident. And that was really important. For us, it's very clear that was very important for the Cuban regime not to be obvious in these efforts to silence them, because that would have been very problematic for the regime, because Oswaldo Payá was an extremely charismatic and well-loved person, and one of the biggest challenges to the regime. So it needed to appear to be something that was accidental. And so the length to which the Cuban regime went to try to set and really spread this official truth about how the circumstances of the death of Payá and Severo just demonstrate how challenged they were by the work and the determination of these two extraordinary human rights defenders and leaders. I'm not gonna cover what the commission found in detail. The Secretary General did very kindly did an overview, but I think that in terms of some key points that are here and that we really wanted to make sure were captured in the findings of the commission, and the commission did, made these recognitions and these findings. One, of course, is that this is not an isolated case. This is part of a broader context that persists today of repression, of closing civic space, of really oppressing dissent in Cuba. For us, and particularly for the families, but for us too, it was really important to convince and provide all the evidence and the arguments for the commission to be able to conclude that this death was the result of direct action by the Cuban regime. So to have the commission directly attribute the violation of the right to life of Carlos Payá and Oswaldo Payá to actions of the Cuban state, which the commission concluded. Also to have the recognition of Ángel Caramero's violations of his due process rights and to have his detention recognized as an arbitrary detention and a sham trial. That was also very important, and it's one of the key findings in this decision that, as I said, is not by Ambassador Mora. It's not that we're surprised. We think everybody that has followed this case knows and already thought the same as that the commission concluded. But having this intergovernmental independent expert body to say so is really important, and it's like a game changer in a way of also what comes next. No? But also having the commission acknowledge the suffering and the harassment that the families suffered even after the death of Oswaldo Payá and Carlos Acevedo, to the point where, as Secretary General Almagro raised, they were forced to seek exile. So that's not a minor thing, and it's also demonstration of this relentless effort by the Cuban regime to continue silencing those that dissent and those that denounce human rights abuses and violations in Cuba. And then finally, but not least, the importance that in the report of the commission is really highlighted, and we have somebody from the Inter-American Commission here, thank you, Melissa, for coming, is also the importance of human rights offenders and the right of human rights offenders to defend human rights. And that's something that is really reflected in this report and some of the recommendations that the Inter-American Commission makes to the government of Cuba, knowing that they're going to try to ignore it as much as possible, is precisely geared towards protecting the right to defend human rights and to dissent. So yeah, what comes next? It's one of the big questions, but for us, is we agree with Rosa Maria that this is on one hand the validation of what the family and many Cuban people have been saying and denouncing all along. But that should also have consequences in the way that the international community and other states, including OAS member states, what they push for in the international arena. We cannot have Cuba anymore be part of the UN Human Rights Council. That's like the one thing that we think is like putting the wolf in charge of the sheep. So I mean, again, this has been a call for many years, but this is something that we're also hoping has consequences beyond this hemisphere. We now have the Inter-American Commission of the OAS stating that the rights of basically that Oswaldo Payá and Carlos Acevedo were killed, and that this happened in a broader context of oppression and of dissent and abuse of human rights. But now it also has to be translated into other fora, including the UN. So I'll leave it there. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this. I'll just say, before we get to questions, another expression of admiration for Ophelia, for being here, for your commitment, and we're just with you. We're always with you. Your whole thing. You need to go. Are you leaving? You look like you're leaving. Thank you for coming. We understand. See you soon. Thank you. So we have time for a few questions. If anybody here has questions, and is there somebody at the RFK staff who might be looking for questions online? Yeah.
Yes, so we received one question.
Can you speak really loudly?
Yes. Should I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, here. Thank you. So we received one question from Nicholas K. on LinkedIn. He says, as the chairman of the Desmond and Leah Tucci Foundation, I applaud you, Kerry Kennedy, the RFK team, and all fellow human rights activists of Cuba for your struggle and successful work achieving justice through truth. The truth has shown again and again throughout history to have a healing effect. The South African Truth and Reconciliation Committee, initiated by President Mandela and chaired by Desmond Tutu, had this profound effect on people and their leaders. How are you now planning to make momentum based on your groundbreaking achievement in the ongoing struggle for justice and human rights in Cuba, in the US, and other parts of the world? What are you expecting to achieve after this important recognition?
Sure. Well, first, thank you. And I, of course, join my voice to that recognition of the work of the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights. Thank you so much, not just for this case, not just for these 10 years, but for your constant battle for justice everywhere. I hope that those that has not only the responsibility, but also the capacity of imposing consequences over the criminals in power in Cuba actually take action. And that's why our first call to action is for the member states of the OAS that are going to be gathering 2 days from now in the General Assembly here in this city. We hope for them to join this condemnation, but also for them to put in motion the tools that the Inter-American system has to basically stop the impunity of the Cuban regime. As I believe we mentioned, similar actions could be taken from the European Union, and there are also countries in our hemisphere, as it is the case of Canada and it is the case of the United States, that have in their legislation tools as for instance the Magnitsky Act that can be implemented to target the criminals that are in power in Cuba at an individual level, at a proxy and family level also that are part of the corruption machinery and that also take part on these crimes. We are hoping for that kind of action to be implemented in addition to all the diplomatic, all the public way in which the different states and the different organizations as United Nations could take in order to support the Cuban people in a way in which the Cuban regime actually feel the consequences of their crimes. That's what at least I am hoping for. Although I understand that there are other paths, maybe using universal jurisdiction that we could also appeal to follow up on this verdict of the Inter-American Commission. But I know that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would just add that in addition to seeking also individual responsibility, this decision is about the responsibility of the government and the regime. But the other piece of it is more specific responsibility. We know that the main, one of the main masterminds is receiving another type of justice. But that said, there's also the aspect of the ongoing violations, the ongoing situation, and the need to continue in supporting human rights defenders and activists both in Cuba and outside of Cuba that are in this struggle. Make sure that they're not alone, that their voices are amplified as much as possible, that they are protected. That's something that we will continue working on, making sure that sooner than later, and hopefully sooner than later, democracy and human rights endowment can really be a reality in Cuba. So that's something we'll continue working, at least from our human rights, and definitely with great allies as Rosa Maria and your organization, and other human rights defenders and organizations as well.
Yes.
Quick question. John Suarez, Center for Free Cuba. What can citizens here in this room and also those watching in live stream, somebody from South Africa was commenting, what can they concretely do to help in advance this cause and achieve the expulsion of Cuba from the UN Human Rights Council, or have the OAS take a more proactive stance? What can average citizens from different countries do to help?
Okay. I thank you for that question, John. There is something that is also probably a big part of the answer to the previous question is truth is finally recognized. Now it needs to be socialized. Everybody needs to know about the crimes of the Cuban regime, because a big part of these 10 years have been fighting against the lies, the propaganda, the hate propagated by the Cuban regime. We are confronting one of the most great lies machineries of our time, which is the Cuban regime. They have been lying to the world for 64 years. So one of the first things that each person that is listening can do is share this truth. Share it and make it vital. Please help us to disseminate the reality about the crime and about Cuba. We need that kind of campaign, and that's something that you have been doing also brilliantly, and that we need to continue. The symbolism has been the realm of the dictatorship. They have been using it for the evil. They have been lying to the world. We have the opportunity of using symbolism and using the tools that we have for the good, and the truth is only what we are saying.
Could I just ask you two questions? So we're here in the United States. You have a piece of legislation. It's passed the Senate. It has not yet reached the House. So people across this country can get in touch with their member of Congress and ask them to support the bill. So I'll ask you for the name of that. And then secondly, if people want to support, so there's support through social media, but you can also send funds, because this is a 10-year struggle, and it takes some funding to do that. And so if they want to support you and your struggle and your work, is there a foundation, or is there a GoFundMe site? How can they do?
Thank you.
Send lawyers.
Yes, and and that part is also crucial. Thank you so much for bringing that topic. And the first one is, yes, please write to your representative. Tell them, hey, it's time to pass this bill, which name is
Oswaldo Payá way bill.
It's the Oswaldo Payá way bill. So it's that easy. Please write to your representative and help us pass this bill. as soon as possible in the House of Representatives. And I want to take this opportunity, this chance that you have gave me, also to appreciate all the work, all the commitment, the love of all the quality promoters, which is the initiative that we defend, and it's the way that we have found to continue my father's legacy. Many of them are now in jail in Cuba. Some of them are here in this room. I really appreciate your support and your commitment. Thank you. Thank you so much. And to all of those that are listening, we have a website, which is cubadecide.org, and we have a donation page. And you can do it online, you can send a check, but definitely this struggle needs your support. This struggle needs the resources. We are, at the end of the day, we are families. We are families in the island and in the exile, again, against a state, a murderous state, with all its resources and with all its power against citizens. So we really appreciate any support that you can give us. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for all your words, and thank you for sharing your victory with us. I think this is an incredible journey, and really congratulate you. I'm from the delegation of Canada to the OAS, and obviously we are one of the countries that support greatly the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. And I just wanted to ask you very quickly, and this may be a longer conversation, but 10 years is a long time, isn't it? It's an awfully long time to work with the commission and to get to results. So I was wondering, in your experience, how did you see this experience with the commission as compared to other bodies that you have worked with? And what would you recommend, how to improve essentially the commission, the work of the commission, so that we have more expedited decisions and results, I suppose. Thank you.
And I must confess I'm a bit biased because I used to work at the Inter-American Commission. So I like having the inside and understand the limitations that the commission has. It is a long time though. And part of the problem of the backlog is the backlog of cases, the lack of resources to really process them in a fast manner. So it's really a call to the OAS member states to support better and more the commission in terms of resources, but also in respecting its independence. We wouldn't have the decision with such an impact today if we didn't have a commission that is independent and composed by expert members. So that's really absolutely in the hands of member states. But yes, it is a long time, a very long time, and it gets frustrating. Otherwise, in the meantime, interesting things happen too, and the family and José María never gave up. But we do need a stronger and faster system compared to others. There's always, it depends on what the possibilities are. For Cuba, really, the commission was the only possibility to have adjudication of the case, because Cuba, again, is part of the Human Rights Council, but it hasn't ratified or accepted the competence of many UN treaty bodies, and so it's, again, one of those ironies that it's difficult to grasp with. So the commission was really the only hope, hope for some measure of justice. But even if it wasn't, it still is a body that goes into so much level of detail and then has this approach to reparations that is, together with the Inter-American Court, they're the only bodies that really have such a comprehensive approach to human rights cases. And so that's another advantage. Sometimes it's worth the wait, but sometimes it's also the only option, like in this case. It was really the in terms of holding the state accountable through an adjudicatory process, the Inter-American Commission. We couldn't go to the court because the Inter-American Court doesn't have jurisdiction, but at least we had the commission. Thank you. Thank you for the question. We have another question.
Yes. Frank, also, I have a question. Iran was expelled from the Commission on Women. Putin was expelled from the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. Is there anything else, anything happening along those lines in regard to Cuba? Any initiative? Has anybody called for that? Is there any support?
I'm happy to, calls, yes, there's been calls, plenty, but because also Cuba has been a part of the Human Rights Council now for 5 consecutive terms of 3 years. We're talking about 15 years in which, the world has become even worse, unfortunately, in terms of human rights and democracy all around, and where we have Cuba systematically opposing resolutions that seek to highlight those very serious situations or even address them. So there's been calls, but no traction. The one thing that we have to give to the Cuban regime is how effective their diplomacy is, especially at the UN level, unfortunately. So that's something, again, talking about what can be done. I think that there's also a lot to do with many member states who choose to turn a blind eye to the human rights abuses that Cuba is committing and then re-elect Cuba to be part of the important fora like the Human Rights Council.
Other questions? Yes.
I just want to briefly comment that I'm very happy with the verdict that this commission has come up with. And we are dealing with a terrorist state that is very smart, that is a fox, and that has used their propaganda to influence a lot of these members of Latin America, the world, Europe, etc. And we have to exploit the results of this commission, make it popular, because as we speak, they are also using the propaganda work. We have to exploit social media thing to make sure that everybody knows about this result. Right now, for example, the dictator has nobody elected him as president is in the management right now, getting also exploiting their propaganda. We have to make sure that everybody is aware of this, and that the states follow up and impose real sanctions or real what penalty Cuba and the dictatorship, the people behind this act, will there be any consequences? We have to make it popular, just because we're fighting a very big propaganda machine.
Thank you. Thanks for those comments. Anything else? Well, then I'll just say thank you again to everybody for coming. Thank you to Rosa Maria for your leadership, for Angelita for your extraordinary brilliance and commitment over all these years, and the whole RFK team, especially Wade, who was at the beginning of this, Wade McMullen, Ophelia for joining us today, and everybody who came out for all of your commitment to democracy and human rights and justice. Thank you very much. Thank you.